Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Hi, folks. Welcome back. And those of you that are new, welcome. Two videos here. A very short video with Rand Paul, Senator Paul, on the floor of the Senate, talking about the ridiculous things we spend money on, and we are broke. We owe trillions. What is it, 21 trillion? It might even be more. It's insane. Absolutely insane. There's no end in sight. So Rand Paul's trying to make some points on the Senate floor, but the real video is about 9 minutes long with Matt Gaetz and Maria Bartiromo. And I never was a huge fan of Matt Gaetz, but after listening to this, I've really warmed up to him. Let's just take a look first at what Senator Paul has to say, and then we'll listen to Matt Gaetz.
It's as if no one has noticed that we have no extra money to send to Ukraine. Our deficit this year will exceed $1.5 trillion. Borrowing money from China to send it to Ukraine makes no sense. It's not as if we have some sort of rainy day fund sitting around, trillions of dollars in a pot of money, and we're just going to send that to Ukraine. We're going to borrow it. When we borrow it and create new money to pay for that borrowing, we create the inflation that is plaguing our economy. Since the beginning of Russia's war in Ukraine, the American taxpayers provided Ukraine with $113 billion. There's a lot of things that we need to fix in our country before we borrow money to try to perpetuate a war in another country.
To fund the government.
Now, we're borrowing money from China, Federal Reserve, to pay for things like gay pride parades in foreign countries. And Matt Gaetz is going to talk about it. Not even counting the Ukraine war. We spend so much money on ridiculousness. Why are all our army bases all over the world? South Korea is more than capable of defending itself. Germany is more than capable of defending itself. NATO is more than capable of defending itself. We have these bases everywhere. Enough is enough. Let's just listen to Matt Gaetz.
Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, thank you very much for being here this morning.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad I get to respond to your monologue, because if you're saying that I'm standing in the way of all the Republican wins, I'd love you to enumerate them. Watching my friend and mentor Jim Jordan, it was quite painful, because he started by saying we should only pick one fight, the border. But then as the interview went on, he said, well, we should pick a second fight, Jack Smith.
Before we go on, I want to say I'm a big fan of Maria's. I don't agree with everything she says or believes in. I've always been a big fan of hers. I just like her personally. But you notice now how respectful this is going to be throughout this interview. She doesn't interrupt them a lot. They're very, very cordial to each other. And this is something unheard of with people that disagree on other networks.
And by the time the interview rounded out, he was saying that we shouldn't be funding Ukraine without a plan, and yet the very continuing resolution that you and Jim Jordan seem to be for continues to have $300 million more for Ukraine. So I think we ought to fight on all fronts. I think the border is very important, and the best way for us to advance the Republican border policies is to pass the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, do that along with veterans, defense, ag, state and foreign ops. We'll have 73% of the discretionary budget funded, and if, the Department of Labor and Education have to shut down for a few days as we get their appropriations in line, that's certainly not something that is optimal, but I think it's better than continuing on the current path we are to America's financial ruin.
Now, I want to say up front, in the year 2000 to 2007, I live in upstate New York, and I was a city council member. It's about almost 50,000 people in the city, and I was one of 9. And I worked on 8 budgets. I was there for 8 years, term limited out. And we went through each department, literally line by line. In other words, we'll say the Department of Public Works, how much they spend on, let's just pick anything, safety equipment. $15,806.42. I'm just making up that number. And we would go through it line by line and vote on it, or vote on the whole page of lines as one group. We didn't vote on the budget as a whole. We could subtract, but we couldn't add money to the budget by state law, but we could move around money. And we went through it line by line. It's an incredibly tedious task. Now, those of you that say, well, John, it's a city budget, the federal budget is huge, he's doing the same theory. He wants to vote on these things as individual packages instead of a big, ginormous thing we just pass every single year and add the inflation rate to it. Something has to stop. Let's listen on.
I understand, and that is why you are on this program this morning, because I want to give you a fair shot, and I want to get you heard. So tell me why you are threatening Speaker McCarthy and trying to shut down this government at a time that the Republicans have finally gotten some upper hands here in terms of wins, able to investigate President Biden on what looks like bribery.
Now, one thing I want to mention before he starts, he doesn't say it, but what he means when he says is the fact that Democrats, they go for the jugular. They are always going 110 miles an hour against you. They never, ever stop. They never pull back. They never, ever stop. They are relentless. And unfortunately, conservative people and Republicans must be the mindset aren't like that. Because for Democrats, these social programs and government is their religion. For conservative people, it isn't. He's going to lay out some facts here. I was very impressed with some of his answers. Even though I wasn't a big Matt Gaetz fan, I'll tell you the truth, I warmed up to the guy.
We don't put our pencils down in the investigation of President Biden during a shutdown, so the premise is false. Second, if Kevin McCarthy was actually serious about pursuing the Bidens, he would have sent Hunter Biden a subpoena by now. That's how you know this is sort of failure theater that you're observing. During the first year of Democrat control of the Congress, they brought in Donald Trump Jr. 3 times over nothing. Over a nothing burger. And so we seem to be fundamentally unserious in our oversight. But what is serious is the fact that we are spending more than $7 trillion a year, bringing in around $5 trillion a year. And I want to fund the government. I'm not pro-shutdown. But the way to fund the government is not the same way we've been doing it since the mid-90s, where it's one up or down vote on the entire government all at once. We should have separate single-subject spending bills. Kevin McCarthy promised that in January. He is in breach of that promise. So I'm not here to hold the government hostage. I'm here to hold Kevin McCarthy to his word.
Now, that's true. And some said that Gaetz, and I believe there were 6 or 8 others, I think there were 10 in total, if I think back, you didn't have enough votes for the speaker. So they had to make a deal with the 10 holdouts. And they said they were obstructionists. And Kevin McCarthy made the deal, listed it out on paper. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. These are our demands. Some say requests, some say demands. If you don't go along with them, we will not vote for you for speaker. And he said yes. So Gaetz has got a point.
Their Freedom Caucus members also out of compliance. They were also on the Appropriations Committee. Where is the responsibility for them? Are they also out of compliance?
No, I'm not a member of the Freedom Caucus. I'll let them speak for themselves. But take, for example, the border. This issue you think has great primacy, and I would agree with you. The Department of Homeland Security appropriations bill was passed out of the Appropriations Committee in June, and yet Kevin McCarthy hasn't put it on the floor in more than 100 days. That is not serious. You know why Kevin McCarthy didn't move our border appropriations bill? Because the lobbyists and the special interests who own Kevin McCarthy want to put us in this position where we're backed up against the wall, facing shutdown politics. And what that does is it centralizes power to the people that they buy off with PAC donations and lobbyist donations. And then the membership doesn't get to make real contributions to that process. I'm trying to democratize it.
Does he have a point? Do you think he's right? I think he is. Like I used the example of the budgets I used to work on. You can pass a bunch of budget lines or a bunch of budget pages, but you're not going to hold up the entire thing over a couple of items. You can pass the bills separately, and that's what he wants, but they don't want that. They want to pass it as a package with all the crap that's in it. And there's a lot of good things, but there's a lot of crap too. We simply can't afford it. It's really that simple.
The bills are being worked on. You just heard Jim Jordan say that they are efforting 4 bills this week, appropriations bills this week, to get through. That would partially fund the government. The defense bill as well. You wanted the defense bill to move forward. Did you not?
Yes, that's why I voted for it, and I voted for the rule to proceed onto it. And by the way, don't give Kevin McCarthy credit for the fact that we're moving on to these 4 appropriations bills. That was the deal that House conservatives foisted upon Kevin McCarthy. When he couldn't just move the big spending bills without moving the bills that cut spending, we said, no, 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 you have to move bills like the state and foreign...
Now, do you get credit for the fact that you did something right that you were forced to do? Or do you only get credit for something that you chose to do on your own?
Bill, because we don't think we should be borrowing money from China to go fund gay pride parades in Prague or LGBTQ seminars in Indonesia. We don't think that that's a good use of our money. And the only way to do this, Maria, is line by line. Kevin wants it in one big up or down vote, keep the government open, shut it down. I'm saying single subject spending bills. It's the only way to break the fever and liberate ourselves from this out of control spending.
Well, he's doing the 4 bills next week. So
because we're making him. Because we're making him.
But he's doing it. So to push now to blow up all of the wins that you all have had now.
Which wins? Please enumerate them.
Well,
yes, please enumerate the wins, because I haven't seen any yet.
Okay, well, how about the fact that he has set up a weaponization committee to investigate the DOJ, whether they're involved in a cover-up?
That's
how about
process.
the fact that he has... Hold on.
Wait
how
a
about
second.
the fact that he... Hold on. How about the fact that he has set up the China Select Committee to keep China to account? And, of course, he has launched this inquiry into impeachment, potentially, for President Biden. Is that not what you want?
None of those things are deliverables. Those are steps in a process. Setting up a committee is an end unto itself, only in Washington, D.C.
Exactly right. He's exactly right. We're working on it. Remember in Animal House? We've had you under double secret probation. The hell does that mean? We have a committee and a subcommittee and a committee of a subcommittee, and we're investigating, blah, 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 blah. It's like in Charlie Brown with the adults. Wah, 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 wah. You have to go for the jugular, just like the Democrats did in the January 6th so-called committee. They play for keeps. And this is serious business. This isn't some high school debate. This is about the richest military, is the most powerful in the world. The way the world goes, the way the U.S. goes, whether they like it or not. This isn't a game. You have to play to win. They're playing to tie. It's amazing to me. I'm starting to warm up the gates a little bit. How about you?
American people demand results. Hold on, I'll let you talk, Maria.
Go ahead.
These committees have done nothing to reduce inflation. They've done nothing to actually constrain the Biden government. We can set up committees and have hearings and yell at people, but at the end of the day, if we still send the check to fund a weaponized government, having a weaponization subcommittee is little relief to the American people. And if any of this was serious, we would be sending out subpoenas and compelling process the way the January 6th committee did. We should be operating like them. Instead, we're playing patty cake with the Bidens. We're allowing them to get away with it. And we're funding it. We're sending the money. If we were serious, use the power of the purse.
Now, it's funny. If you're a non-union employee, and every 6 months we'll say you get a review from the manager or whoever your boss is, and they say, you know what? You really stink. You are one of the worst employees I have ever had. And it goes through the list of just line after line after line of F-ups that you've done. But at the end of the so-called review, you get a failing grade. But guess what? You get your raise anyway. So what do you give a crap? You're not going to improve. You got all the money you want. It's like the DOJ. They're going to get every dime they ask for, even though they're a gigantic anti-Constitution, anti-Republic organization now. They spy on their own people. They spy on their political opponents. It's amazing to me. Anybody that thinks the intelligence services and the DOJ and the FBI, I'm not saying they're all bad, but there's enough bad apples in there that are running the place. Now, the other 70, 80% might be looking with their heads down because they don't want to get in trouble. You don't need a majority to take over something. This thing's going to break. So let's just give them the money they asked for and then call them to say what a rotten job they're doing. I don't care if we call them names as long as they get the money that they're promised to do the things they want to do.
The Speaker joined me a week ago and told me that he will, in fact, subpoena Hunter Biden. He said at the appropriate time. But let's be clear.
It's been 8 months. When do you think the appropriate time
is?
is? How many months should the American people have to wait before that subpoena is sent? You tell me.
Yeah, that's a good question. 8 months. 8 months. And a lot of those things are going after Hunter Biden for, like the IRS and this and that. The statute of limitations are dropping off one by one. Everybody thinks all laws have a statute of limitation of 7 years. They don't. Some are 5, some are 6, some are less. So, yeah, when is it appropriate time? Well, we got election coming. We can't do it now. Well, we can't do it for this. Well, it's not good optics. You know what? Screw the optics. Do what's right. Go after them as hard as they go after you. The reason why they go after Republicans, especially at the state, I live in New York, and the federal level, is because Republicans are pussies, and they know they won't push back. It's like somebody breaking into your house and taking your stuff. If you don't report them to the police and do some pushback, they're going to turn around and do it again, and then do it again, and you stand in your doorway and with your finger pointing at them and calling your neighbor names for stealing your stuff. Yet there's no repercussions. That's what he's talking about.
We would not know anything that we know about the Biden family. 176 suspicious activity reports, 20 shell companies set up while he was vice president, the whistleblower testimony. We would not know any of this if not for those committees that he set up exposing all of this. We just heard from Merrick Garland last week.
But you have to follow that to its natural conclusion. It's not enough to expose facts that get people angry and animated. You then have to follow those facts to a conclusion and to accountability. You see, that's what Republicans are bad at. We're great at having the hearings and putting on the performances, but if you're still going to underwrite Biden's debt, which is what Kevin McCarthy did joining with Democrats on the debt limit deal, and if you're going to join up with Democrats to still fund his government, Merrick Garland will sit there and he'll answer my tough questions and he'll smirk at me or he'll obfuscate, and then guess what? He goes back to the Justice Department and the coffers are full with money from the American taxpayer that gets turned against the brave patriots in this country. What about the January 6th tapes? Kevin promised he was going to release those. I'm still waiting.
Well, the January 6 tapes are available to anybody who wants to see them. He gave them and allowed Tucker Carlson and his team to see them. Congressman, it is true.
No, Maria, they are not available to anyone who wants to see them. That is a factual misstatement. They have been curated for some people in the media and some defense attorneys, but any American cannot see any of the January 6th tapes.
I didn't know that. I thought they were available to everyone. Only certain media outlets and defense attorneys, like he said. And it's amazing to me. I thought they were available at a website, and there's so many thousands of hours that who would want to, but that's not the point. We were told they would be released, but they technically released them to people they wanted to so they can say they kept their promise. You see how this works? See how this works? You know what? Gates is right. I used to think he was an obstructionist and just an ass in general, but I'm beginning to wonder. Maybe he isn't. This interview definitely warmed me up to him. And again, I'll mention the fact they're both respectful not to talk over each other, which is very uncommon, especially on news media when they disagree.
Not right now indirectly working with Democrats because you are going to allow Chuck Schumer to come up with a continuing resolution next week to fund the government. That's what your actions are doing. That's why some people feel this is a personal vendetta you have against the Speaker.
No, my vendetta is against a Washington system that allows corruption to put the interests of lobbyists and PACs above the interests of the American people.
Now, is what he's saying, in a way, the way I interpret it, that Kevin McCarthy is a symptom of the sickness being, we'll just keep doing what we've always done. I believe they had a continuing resolution and keep voting on the same things, just added for inflation since 1998. That's 25 years ago. That's a long time to just push it through. So is he against Kevin McCarthy as a person? Probably not. But Kevin McCarthy is a symptom, I believe, of the sickness.
Kevin McCarthy facilitates that system, and I do deeply resent that. But I'm not working with Chuck Schumer or any other Democrat. I am the one working with House conservatives to require single-subject spending bills. No. You guys criticize me for forcing single-subject spending bills. Then you give Kevin McCarthy the credit for doing it. The reality is this is the only way to liberate ourselves from a bad system.
I think the single bills sound
right. Well, then why hasn't he done them? It's September. We knew September 30th was coming all year, and Kevin McCarthy has been dilatory. He's been fiddling like Nero as Rome burns.
As we understand it, they're doing this upcoming week, so we will be watching
because
that.
we are making them. They are doing it with a political gun to their head, and you are welcome, America, and we're going to keep making them do it.
Congressman, thank you.
Well, you have to ask yourself, is he right? Yes. The one thing I've learned, it was funny, after I was off of city council here, I was on a local radio station in an interview, and the interviewer asked me, what are some of the most important things you learned as being a council member? And the number one thing that I learned was being right is not enough. I thought just being right and using your own will to push the things you think are right and know that are right true is enough. Not even close. Unfortunately, that's what I think Gates is up against. Being right isn't enough. I'm beginning to think those 8 or 10 or whatever there were holdouts that made Kevin McCarthy promise these things to get the speakership were really trying to do the right thing. They really were. And the Democrats are going to stand there and say, well, look how divided they are and look how united we are because we're all for the American people and they can't even get along with themselves and they can't govern. You guys gave them the majority in the House and they can't even govern. They're about the teenage kids that don't know what the hell they're doing and And then you have probably a good third of the Republicans that are rhinos that would go along with the Democrats in the second on 95% of what they want. It's insane. Who's paying who? Who's getting rich? They just want to get reelected. And as a person that held public office, I can understand that premise. I'm not going to do anything to stop myself from getting reelected. But can you do the right thing at the same time? It's a tough mix. I'm not defending the rhinos, but I'm saying is the people, the American people, they get to decide who the House members are. And look at Nancy Pelosi. She's running again. You mean to tell me there's no Democrats in that San Francisco district or outside of San Francisco that are be a better job than Nancy Pelosi? I mean, they almost have to be by default. And it'll be a Democrat because it's a plus like 50 Democrat district. So what do? You're in a district you can never lose in. So you're going to do what the party wants you to do. If it goes against your constituents, then so be it. It's a mess, absolute mess. We need a balanced budget amendment. Remember, that was talked about in the past. In fact, I'm not mistaken, Bill Clinton was the only president that had a balanced budget. I believe it was for a couple of years. Maybe somebody can look it up and correct me. We need to have a balanced budget. And I don't mean just fudging numbers and moving around a very well done balanced budget. In other words, if we take in $5 trillion in taxes, we can't spend more than 1 cent more than $5 trillion. And that includes our debt service. It's simple math. It's how they get away with it so far. It's not their fault. They get away with it because we allow it. You'll go in and just go in, we'll say the presidential year, and vote your party and go right down the line, Democrat or Republican. The vast majority of people do it. I'm going to leave you with a little anecdote, and then I'm going to stop here. Last time I ran for city council, I ran as a Republican, even though the 8 years I was on there, I was a Democrat. I was off for 4 years and tried to get my seat back. A good friend of mine used to come into my convenience store. Him and I got to be friends. He lived in the neighborhood. And we got, fairly tight. We were friends, and I was friends with his wife. And the night before Election Day, she come in later at night, and boy, she said she was awful tired. She was on the phone all day making phone calls for city council candidates. And I said, who'd you make calls for? And she mentioned one other person and then my opponent. And I looked at her and said, you made phone calls for X? And she said, yeah, why? I said, you realize, of course, that's my opponent. And she was shocked. I says, would you have done that knowing? She says, oh, no. I said, you don't even know who you're supporting. And that's the problem. and she didn't know what to say. And I could tell she genuinely felt bad. And that's what 98% of Democrats do. They vote the party no matter what. I don't know what the answer is to it all. But the money part, you can solve. You just have to have the grit to do it. Well, like I said, I wasn't a big fan of Matt Gaetz, but I'm starting to come around. Let me know what you think. And until the next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.